ALTBAYS. ALTBAYS. ALTBAYS.
And we're live. ALTBAYS Show brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. School holidays. Good for the kids. Good for the ones who work at school. Good for some parents, maybe. Not all of them. Wow. It's good to see you guys. If you're watching us right now, it's because you're on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel to make sure that the platform keeps growing and reaching more people. You can also join our platform now, become a member, and throw some dollars there for the team so we can keep doing cool things. Okay? This is a show, in an independent show. We like to call an alternative media platform. Not because we are alternative, but because it's not a mainstream thing. There's no one putting the money out there for us to do things. So we really appreciate support from the audience. Thank you very much. Yay. After the end of the show, this becomes available in all the main podcast platforms. If you're more of a listener, just go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and you will find ALTBAYS there. Okay, we have a second channel, the ALTBAYS Clips, where we break down the conversations. If you think it's a long show, you can go for the clips and see some of the topics. And if you like, you go for the full one. You also can find us on the main social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. TikTok is madness, man. It's just like madness. I avoided at all costs to be there. And I understand why, because then it catches you. And once it catches you, you're gone down the rabbit hole. Great. On my left, Chloe Watts. What a pleasure, Chloe. Thanks for coming back.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Really good, yeah. Getting used to having my kids in the house again, which takes the first week, and the second week is the fun week, where we're all used to each other again.
Okay, so you are one of the parents that enjoy the school holidays. Is it an excuse for you to take some time off as well for yourself?
Yeah, I try to. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know whether I enjoy them. I like having the kids around, but also you get used to them being out of the house, and now they're back in the house. Yeah, and I need better weather. If it was sunny, it would be fine, but
because you mainly work from home, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So for the audience who doesn't know Chloe, she came for one of our shows, and you are the owner of Blueberry Co. Memory Books.
That's it.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
We have the Instagram on the screen. Yes, nice. How is that going, Chloe?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah,
Yep.
We're building up to Christmas. We've got a whole new bunch of products that have just launched. Yeah, just ticking away, trying to do the run up to Christmas, and then we take some time off over summer, and then back into it next year.
Cool. Are you planning to go on a trip, to go somewhere, or are you cruising?
Yeah.
You staying in the Coromandel?
No, we've got, we go to Australia for 3 weeks in November, visit family. I've got a friend's wedding. And then what do we do? Oh, and then we're going to, just after Christmas, we're going to drive down south. We've got a family batch out at Aramoana, just out of Dunedin. So we're going to go there and then spend a couple of weeks there. And then we drive home for the summer and, cruise.
Nice.
Yeah.
All planned out.
Yeah.
Done.
Busy. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Like professional people, they plan even the holidays very well, right? I can tell. We'll be here, we'll be there, we're going.
Yeah.
What about the kids? How old are your kids?
I've got 2 girls, they're 7 and 5.
7 and 5.
Yeah, so my littlest one just started school since we last talked. It's magical when they both go to the same place. Yeah,
nice.
So good. And she loves it. Yeah.
Which school is she going to?
Tararega. Yeah.
Nice. So tonight we have the pleasure to talk to Kate Seddon. Hello, Kate.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Do you like the space?
I do. Definitely a bit nervous, but we'll ease into it.
We're nervous too. You're not alone. Don't worry. Kate, your the list of things that you do is quite long. You have your fingers in all the pies.
Yep. No, definitely hard to summarize it. But basically I started out as a nurse. That's kind of where my career started out, and has evolved like we all do.
Got into midwife?
So I guess, so basically I started as a registered nurse. Love to say for all the right reasons, but it was to travel. That was the goal. Short 3-year degree, and then fell in love with it, did end up travelling with it, and then ended up moving back to Australia, which is where I grew up, and really wanted to work for the flying doctors. So went on and became a midwife, which from the first baby that I was able to be at the birth, that definitely kind of embedded that I was in the right place, and that's kind of what I was meant to be doing. And then had a shitty boyfriend, life goes on.
As we all do.
Decided to have a bit of a break from the hospital system and shift work and all that. So ended up doing health and safety out at the mines for a while, which was quite different to anything else I'd done. And basically got lured over here to a Coromandel boy, and moved over here 8 years ago, and over the years have still gone back to Aussie and worked as a nurse and a midwife in between, but more recent years worked in general practice around here and in sexual health as a school nurse, and then, over the last couple of years, retrained as a hypnotherapist and really kind of getting more into the holistic wellness for women. Obviously, super passionate about mums. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Nice. I have some questions there. But just before we keep going, I just want to say thank you to Blue Ginger for bringing us this beautiful Kai tonight. Our big supporters, Blue Ginger, Fusion Restaurants in Whitianga. So if you are coming to the Coromandel for the holidays, you gotta check Blue Ginger, Blue Ginger NZ. We left the did I say it right? Yes. We're gonna have the information on the screen, blueginger.co.nz, and also on the description. So make sure to check them out. I'm having the Karma Kapau, same as yours.
Yep.
Delicious,
Amazing.
Which one is that one? The Karaga
chicken.
Karaga chicken,
Yeah.
yummy. And Papa, what have you got there, man? Is it the Buddha? Yeah, man. The Buddha bowl. Yow. So thanks to Stu and Bags, all the crew from Blue Ginger. Thank you very much. Now, Kate, I'll tell you a story. In Brazil, when I was a kid, like they have those Sunday shows, like to keep the family entertained in the afternoon. And every now and then, they would have this hypnosis guy, the hypnosis guy, and he would go and he would like line up people, and then he would ask, and he had this funny accent, and he was like, how do you want to be hypnotized? Quickly, slowly, quickly, bro. And the guy would hold the people's head and like make them fall asleep, or he would do like a circle with his finger until the person kind of like pass out, and he would say something in the person's ear, and then wake up, and like people would do like all these crazy things. And as a kid, I was fascinated. But then as I grew up, I was always like, damn, are those people really doing that? Because some of the stuff, even if they were good actors, they were very tricky things to do. Like he would convince people that the onion was an apple, like in the next minute the person is like buying, and I'm like, what the fuck? So 2 questions. Can you do that to me? That's the first one. I'm joking. And the second one, what's the difference between what you do with hypnotherapy to that practice of people like putting a show?
Yep. So it would probably underwhelm you to start with. So nothing like the movies. I guess just like childbirth, it's not really like the movies either. So we can compare those two. Basically, I just get you. It's essentially like a deep relaxation or a deep meditation, where we get your logical mind to kind of step aside and we tap into those subconscious thoughts that you're not actually aware of. Generally, I haven't had anything too drastic come up. It has been a little bit, disappointing for some people, but we end up having this chat before every session because we're all led to believe that is what hypnotherapy is like in the real world. But no, just for the movies.
Do you have to be in the right mindset to accept the treatment? Like, is it one of those things that if you're skeptical, it's not gonna work?
Absolutely. You have to be open to new suggestions for your mind. And I found that a lot of people who have worked with me have been curious for a long time, and then eventually something happens and they decide that they'd give it a go. And over the years, I've worked a lot in mental health and different areas, and I'm blown away by the change people can have through really rewiring those subconscious thoughts. Really, really powerful.
Can you give us some examples of like what people usually look for?
So an example is one lady came to see me. She just felt she's a busy mum. Life always feels chaotic and crazy and hectic, and she really wanted to regain a control and feel like she was in charge of life again. Basically what came up in her hypnotherapy, which I know she won't mind me sharing, is an image came up when she was a young girl and she used to have asthma attacks, and that was when she would get lots of attention from the family. And basically in her mind, her chaos and craziness and overwhelm, that is what her safe place was as a child, and that is how her behaviours kind of were in adult life, was that was when she felt that was her normal. So we rewired that to the opposite, and now she bloody sends me pictures of planners and all sorts. She's way more in control than I am. So yeah.
Have you had any experience, Chloe, with something like that, with some treatment similar to?
No, but I do like the idea of it, especially in the birth space, because I think it's, with my two girls' births, they were so different, and the headspace was different for both of them. And the more traumatic one was the one where I panicked. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily because of the trauma that came from it, or like the anxiety that I feel about it, didn't necessarily come from what happened. Like if you look at it written down in some notes about exactly what happened, it wasn't extreme in any way. But it's like it's what space you're at, where your safety points are, how you feel like you're out of that, and if you have a toolkit to draw on to be able to bring yourself out of that space, particularly through birthing and having small children, because that can be just as stressful. I just think it sounds amazing. So
people can have the sessions before giving birth, after. So if it's before, is it like a preparation, like putting your mindset in the right space? Is that the approach? Yeah.
So with to do with birth, that's generally referred to hypnobirthing, and so that's something that I teach as well to women. And hypnobirthing was also why I became really curious about it, because, like Chloe just said, it can make a huge difference in labour. So for women who are going into childbirth, like a big part of what we would do would be reprogram the mind to birth being positive and exciting, and kind of the opposite to what is often thought about in today's society. And that we know that can have a huge impact on how the birth plans out. Big part of it.
The C-sections, do you think they're so popular because women fear that idea of like, oh, it's going to be painful, oh, it's going to be, I don't know how it's going to be like, or I don't know, it's something that doctors in different countries, they will try to push because they will make more money out of it. Like, why is it so? Because again, like I'm coming from a completely place of ignorance in the subject, but I'm curious. It feels to me that it's just not natural. I understand that in some cases it's very necessary, but like, would you opt that knowing that the natural one is better? Or?
So generally you can't opt for a cesarean unless there's a medical reason why, and that might also be mental health reasons as well.
That's in New Zealand?
That's in New Zealand,
right.
yeah. So that's generally how it works in New Zealand and Australia. What I personally think has got a big part to do with it is when women end up in a hospital system and are being monitored, there's guidelines like there are everywhere. And if you haven't progressed by a certain amount of time, then you get rushed, basically. And so there's often concern around baby. If things haven't gone by the textbook, which we know that's not how birth happens. No. So any listeners out there that are pregnant, if you're well and baby's well and you can stay at home as long as possible, that's definitely can have a big impact on your labour. And then where were we going with that? So then if you have a cesarean for one baby, it's generally the second one, unless you push to not do that the second time, then that would be the course of you would be opted to have a cesarean second time. So that first birth can kind of impact what happens afterwards in future births as well. And there's definitely a big place for cesareans as well. And talking about birth trauma before, that a lot of women that I've seen over the years, they wish they could have had a cesarean. So yeah, just I'm very open-minded about it, and it's not always, for a lot of women, they're happy that that's how it ended up, and for a lot of women, they're not happy as well, which is totally understandable.
Everyone's feelings end up being, I think everyone, I've had one of each. I had an emergency Caesar for my first, and VBAC, or was it, what does that stand for? Vaginal
birth
after cesarean. Yeah, for my second, and I think every time my second was, like I said, the more traumatic one. And every time my husband and I float the idea of a third child, we're like, we would schedule in a cesarean because I do not want to do that ever again. But then again, maybe if I was in the right headspace, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So is that part of the approach to the treatment as well, like the therapy of like being ready for whatever comes?
Yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that you had a traumatic birth, Chloe. And I just also wanted to say that for any listeners out there, so birth trauma isn't just the actual birth itself. So it can be a fertility journey that you've been on for a long time, and then you've got this baby and all of a sudden you don't feel how you thought you were going to feel. So from pregnancy, birth, and postpartum as well. And it doesn't, often women who experience birth trauma, they have felt as traumatic because they haven't been a part of making decisions. It might not be that something happened, but they actually weren't part of what went on. So that's just for anybody listening, that sometimes women don't identify with birth trauma, but their experience might have actually left some heaviness, and that can actually be birth trauma as well.
Yeah, and I think I've had friends who have they might have like a crazy birth story in comparison to the situation that I walked away with, with a whole lot of anxiety and stress over. And it's just each person's individual reaction to it, like your situation and the stresses leading up to it, and like anything to do with your mental health, it just is, from talking to friends and my experiences, it's so different for each woman.
Yeah.
Is it an approach that sometimes you have the partner with the woman so he can be prepared as well and supportive, or it's mainly focused on
100%. Yeah, 100%. A partner or a birth support person, whoever's going to be there. And like locally, so we don't have antenatal classes locally, so I've set up some antenatal classes, which I generally do it every 3 months, and partners are welcome. We have a beer at lunchtime if the guys want a beer to lure them in there. I know my partner needed a bit of encouragement to go along. So, and sorry, there was something else I was going to say with that.
Oh, but I will just comment. I think if you're listening and I know my husband he came along to the antenatal classes. That was at our hospital because we had our first Rosie in Australia. The second one, we're like, we know this. We've done this before. Highly recommend that you do something every single time you fall pregnant or have a baby, because it's so different each birth. But also I think Dave was kind of like, I think he wanted to learn about what would happen so that he knew, but he also was like, it'll be taken care of. I don't need to. But then I think after having our second Sophie, I found it traumatic. He found it traumatic. and we struggled with an upset baby for a year, like, you know, and I just think, oh, like, actually we need to bring the men in to this whole space about what it is to have a baby and help them understand that it's not just the women going through it by themselves, because then you're even more isolated. You're as the woman, you're struggling to like wake up with this baby. You've just had this crazy experience that changed your whole life, and you want your partner in there with you, and they need to understand it. So even if they're hesitant, having someone who understands even just like the mechanics of birth and what can happen will give you both, I think, an understanding to then go forward, because it is a crazy, crazy process.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to mention is for any support people that you are the gatekeeper. So, you know, when we feel scared and afraid, to have somebody there that loves us and supports us, that actually can change everything for us, and that actually can impact the whole labour. It changes our hormones, it helps labour progress. So it might feel like nothing, but a back rub or telling, if there's too many people in the room, telling someone to piss off, that actually can make a huge difference for you and your partner and bringing your baby in. So yeah, don't ever underestimate the power you've got in that room.
Yeah. Was there anything in your experiences that surprised you, that you were like, oh, okay, now that I'm aware of this, I'm going to also focus and talk about this experience? Because I believe you were like, okay, cool, I got this. But was there something that you didn't see coming, or you were like, oh, this is interesting, this is new?
As in around birth, or? Yeah. I've had a couple.
Well, actually in the whole, not just birth. But
I've had a couple of ladies who have walked in and haven't known they've been pregnant and had a baby, and that just blew me away, because legitimately didn't know. Like, their mother came in, one lady in particular, her mother came in the following day, and I asked her, because they lived together, and I said, did you honestly not know? No idea. So it just really...
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. There's been lots over the years, but
you're something on your own experience of giving birth, that when you had the experience, you were like, okay, I have to focus on this when I'm talking to these women.
Yeah. I talk about it to anybody, but a mother's intuition, and the best piece of advice I could give anyone going into, particularly if you're wanting to have a vaginal birth, is blocking the world out those last 3 or 4 weeks and listening to your body. And I know for my second labour, had I not listened to my body, definitely would have been an emergency cesarean. So something as simple as just getting the feeling that you need to get up and change positions and move, go to the toilet, whatever. But can be the difference between an emergency Caesar and also in pregnancy, if you get that feeling that something's not right, then contacting your midwife or your health team, and that's in any area of health, not just childbirth. I think we underestimate that with all of the technology and all the Googling, but we actually often have the answers within.
It's a good starting lesson, don't you think, to parenthood, that like that whole journey into pregnancy, and you're like, oh wait, I have to advocate for myself and go with my gut feeling, and then that gets repeated again and again and again as you have your baby, and then that baby grows into a child, and it's like you just have to follow. If you've got a gut instinct on something and someone tells you no, go and follow it up with someone else, because you just have to you have to go with it.
And no one else gets that feeling but you, so you have to,
When you sent me that little bio with some information, that was something that got my attention. You said with the health system, sometimes it's hard for women to find that personal, that support that is so needed. So the holistic approach, is it not considered part of like what would be expected? Like you go to the doctor and that's what the doctor says. Can it be called alternative or not? It's just different from what you would expect by going to...
I think we're really lucky where we live. We've got amazing medical professionals in our area, but the reality is a 15-minute consult Like, how deep can you go in 15 minutes? And yet we can double book appointments and stuff. But often with a health journey, it's not just a one-off appointment. It's regular talking, and things change day by day. So our medical team here are amazing and really open to alternative medicine, if you want to call it that. But I think just the way that the world is these days, that the medical model in a GP clinic doesn't fit everybody, and we're all aware of that. And I think it's just working out what works for you. So like we talked about with the hypnotherapy, not everybody's interested in it. Some people are, and I think if it's something that you're interested in, whether it be acupuncture or Chinese medicine or whatever it is, then exploring different options if you're kind of not getting the outcome that you want in the mainstream healthcare system.
Not just like focusing on birth now, but just overall women's health and mental health. What is the main public, you would say? Like, do you get more young people coming to talk to you, moms or older women? Like, what's
so
the
I get
demographics, I would say?
Yeah, sure. So I see a lot of people who are in a similar situation to me. So basically, last year I ended up having a few health issues, and I was really struggling to function as a mum because I wasn't 100%, and it really kind of made me realise that so many mums I see at the park, so many mums that would see me in general practice were actually feeling how I felt, but because I wasn't living it with young kids, I didn't actually understand the impact that it had. So last year, what I went through, it really made me research every possible type of treatment, and when I ended up getting well, which is amazing, and I feel amazing. And basically a lot of women that I see now are mothers that are generally kind of either pregnant or up to about 10 years postpartum, and there's not actually anything medically wrong with them. I always make sure they've been seen by a doctor and gone down that road, but often it just comes down to our lifestyle and sometimes our past. So sometimes we do inner healing type work, and I look at nutrients, we look at the biochemistry and bloods. We do like a whole kind of head to toe assessment and a mind, body, soul kind of look at the woman, because I believe everyone's an individual. So a lot of people I see are mums who are just kind of exhausted and want to feel energized, or they're surviving but know that there's so much more for them out there, but they can't quite get on top of their day-to-day vitality to live kind of the life that they want and be the mum they want to be.
Well, I always hear about the, how do you say, the depression postpartum? For women who think that they're having that, because sometimes it's hard, like you just, maybe I'm just sad. Like, what are great indicators that maybe you should be looking for help, or is it actually that important to name something that is happening to you? I
think basically if you are feeling like, if you generally feel a certain way, so talk about your mood, so 0 feeling flat, 10 being amazing, you could swim across the river. So if you generally feel a 6 or 7 and all of a sudden you start feeling a 1 or 2, and it's happening day after day, and things that usually interest you, that they're no longer exciting you or motivating you, or you're feeling overwhelmed with day-to-day, like showering, eating, caring for your child, they would all definitely be indications to talk to your doctor or your midwife or your partner to start with, if you don't want to talk to anyone else. And often it's the partners that have concerns about their wife or partner, that's often where the conversation starts. So really actually trying to bring it up if you do have concerns and you're worried about your partner.
Communication, Chloe?
So much communication. But I think it's important, because it's like, I think especially with mental health, when people are in crisis, I think a lot of the time they can just be like just struggling to keep their heads above water. They can't see anything else. They've got tunnel vision on, like, right, well, if I just make it through today, then I just make it through tomorrow. Like, don't think too far ahead, just paddle, 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 just keep going.
Yeah.
And I think when you're the person on the outside watching someone go through that, you can be a bit nervous to ask the question and say, like, no, actually, are you okay? But that can be or share some sort of vulnerability about yourself and where you're at or where you have been, because that can be so important, and like just opens up the conversation, takes the guilt and the shame away, which I think is so prevalent with mothers in particular. You think, well, hold on, I'm struggling, but that I should be fine. This is like, I've got a healthy baby. I should be grateful for that. I should, everything is fine in my world, but I'm not okay.
Yeah.
So I think, that's so important to identify that it's okay to ask your partner that question, and also involve the people around you, because maybe it's a friend that can break through. Maybe it's, an in-law or a parent, or, the people who are in your support system, and say, like, just ask the question, have the conversation.
Absolutely. Yep.
When you now going a little bit back more like to the biology, something that came up in this show, and we had different perspectives, and I think you can help us with both sides, like the doctor vision, the idea, and also the more like spiritual as well, how much it affects the baby, the mood of the mother, the environment, what's happening, how the mom is feeling, and is it something that can be changed? If it's something that really affects the baby, is it something that it can change? Because everybody talks about, up to 7 years old, that's when the child is creating the personality and all this thing, but it always gets me like, wow, it's such a crucial time. So how much of the external and what the mom is doing actually affects the baby that we know?
Hugely. And that's not for any mums that might be listening that might feel like they are in that situation. There's absolutely nothing that you're doing wrong, but that's why help is so important, because we know that the connections for baby and their primary caregivers, we know that is so important for the way that they develop relationships later on, the way they feel love, the way they feel connection. So it definitely can have an impact on the child. And obviously if mum's in that situation, when she's well again, often when we're going through a trauma, we look back and we see it differently. And so we don't want mums to look back and be like, I was there, but I don't remember any of those feelings, because there was a disconnection there. So that's something that we can never go back and get that time again. So just, so important that we help any mums that are feeling like this.
And nutrition as well? Is it something that like it's each case is a case?
Yeah. So other cultures do it so much better than us. And
in what aspects, for example? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. So sorry, I've just had a total blank. Morocco. They stay home for 40 days. Postpartum, mum stays home. Somebody will bring in the best goat that they've been able to find. So nutrition is just so important postpartum. And there's actually studies now. There's an amazing man in Byron Bay that's doing lots of work in this area, and he's discovered that a lot of women these days are depleted in essential nutrients up to 7 years postpartum, because we're not getting that support and the nutrients that we need. And we know that can impact on developing depression and anxiety and lots of other things. So important.
I had a lady when I was pregnant with Sophie, where we went to a Korean barbecue place in Albany, and the little old Korean lady who was out the back cooking brought me out, and I was like heavily pregnant, brought me out a seaweed soup that she'd made. She was like, pregnant lady, I've got to make this seaweed soup. And she was like, this will help you. And it was like, and she's like, it just keeps the iron up.
Yeah.
And of course, and because, so when you're pregnant, your iron, is that starts at one level and you can't add to it? Or is that, how does it work? It just like goes down basically through the whole
because your placenta is taking up so much of your blood.
And so she was like, right, well, you've got to eat the most like iron-rich foods you can, and one of the big ones is seaweed. But yeah, I was like, oh my God. And she said she ate it every day throughout her whole pregnancy and for like a year afterwards. She's like, that's what you do in Korea. You're constantly eating and keeping the iron up because you need it. And 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 we went home and I was like, oh, so no iron infusion for me.
Yeah.
I'll just keep eating this seaweed soup. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it something to do with the cravings as well? Because we always hear the craziest stories about women wanting to eat soil or bite the wall. So what's the relationship? Like it would make sense that it's something to do with nutrients, but why random things?
I think that's just pregnancy, another perk of pregnancy.
If I knew it, if we all knew.
Yeah. I was somebody who hugged the toilet bowl every day of both my pregnancies.
Oh, the whole way?
The whole way, yeah, apart from the day before giving birth. So I had all these great ideas on what women should eat in pregnancy. And once you live it, whatever you want to eat in pregnancy,
You
go
just
for
survive.
it.
Did you have, Chloe, any cravings or things that you were a bit surprised with?
Not really, but I did have this rather optimistic view that that it was all in my head and that I'd be one of those women that would keep exercising throughout pregnancy. And I felt pregnant, like literally as soon as I got the positive test, like the next day I was like, oh, I feel a bit queasy. And I only vomited once with Sophie, but it was like full on nausea through the whole first trimester. And so I just ate dry crackers constantly. And then it was I would just keep eating. Like I could not stop eating the whole time. It was like, right, give me any food, I'll just eat constantly. And I think with Rosie, I bumped over, so I'm tall, I'm like 6'1", but I bumped over the 100 kilo mark. And I did have a midwife at the end of the pregnancy with Rosie, and she was like, whoa. She's like, you're rather big. I was like, I know. And it was like, I just couldn't stop eating the whole time. And
We all know about like the benefits of exercising, but from your studies and from your experience, like how much is too much sometimes for a pregnant mother, for a pregnant woman, or after, like is again, I understand that each case is a case, but is that something that you would recommend?
Everybody is an individual. I definitely would recommend that nobody rushes back before 6 weeks after having a baby, and they definitely should graduate. So at the 6 week mark, it might be a 10-minute walk on the beach, then at 7 weeks, a 20-minute walk, so just graduating it up. But also no intense like heavy lifting or anything like that, just being really aware that abdominal separation and things like that can happen. But you should really be checked by a doctor or a women's health physio before returning to exercise after kiddies. You might feel all right initially, but it might be 6 months or 12 months down the track that you start to notice that you did go back too early.
And what about during pregnancy? If the woman feels okay, feels the energy, is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that can help with like blood pressure and diabetes and things like that. So if you're well and you're able to, keep exercising as you would. Towards the end of your pregnancy, you might need to reduce some things down. I wouldn't do too much high intensity from kind of that 20-week mark onwards, and also that early pregnancy as well, when you are really tired and stuff, just really listening to your body and avoiding things like sit-ups and things like that first trimester.
There are so many taboos when it comes to talking about sex, talking about what can happen, like and you worked at schools, you're a nurse, you're dealing with the everyday people, like you're there. How do you see the way that we are communicating with girls and I must say with boys, with young men to be supportive and to understand that we all have our mood swings and all those things? Like how do you see this connection of working in so many areas that actually they're all so connected?
Being completely honest, I think our teenagers are still really craving connection with adults and not and all the parents listening are going to be like, no, they're not. They're locking themselves in the rooms. But I'm really lucky. I get to have have over the past had lots of honest conversations with these kids, and they really love that one-on-one connection. And it might be that you need to go fishing to get through to your son. It might be that, you need to go to the movies with your daughter or whatever. But letting them know that you actually care about them and giving them that space to open up. And I know I was a bitch as a teenager. Like, don't ask me anything. Oh, you asked me too much. Like, it's a difficult time to navigate as a teenager, but also for parents. But I think just really, if you can, just have those conversations with your kids. So important.
Are you gonna let your girls have sexual educations at school, Chloe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to be there, I think, because, I mean, not to embarrass them, because I think if it depends on what age group, like what age it happens, because that would be embarrassing having mum there. But even just to like learn the language and how to talk to teenagers about, like particularly teenagers, because I'm not there yet. But yeah, for sure. I'm happy for other people to like talk to my kids about it.
Yeah.
It's so awkward. Like when your kids ask you, you're like sometimes I'm like see my kids glaze over and I'm like, oh, I went into too much detail. They got bored.
Yeah.
Like
okay, some things we need to tag off to auntie or somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. And I think just remembering that teenagers are going to find the answer and it might be on a website. So it's being able to kind of make sure the information they're getting is the safest, how they should be taught about certain things, and just helping them be able to make the right decisions. Obviously, teenagers, we know they take risks and they like risky behaviour. So being able to help with trying to get those least risk as possible where we can.
Did you feel like some of the kids coming to see you, it was more of a thing of wanting to connect, as you mentioned before, that sometimes that headache or something was a bit of, not saying that they were not, but just an excuse to actually be there. And
We I won't talk too much about it, but we do a thing where we are able to talk to all the year 9s. And so I was in the school for 2 years, and it was amazing from the kids that we met 2 years ago, that the connections that we've got now when they're that bit older, and they come and talk to us about all sorts, and it's pretty cool for them to have that space, because we all know it's bloody hard to get into the doctors around here.
Mm-hmm. And what about the way that they are relating with technology, and is it something that they would come? You obviously don't have to tell specific cases, but like, are they open about what they see and questions? Or because like I remember when I was a kid, like, oh, you think you know it all, right? It's like, oh no, I saw it on the internet, so I know. Like, are they open to talk about these things once you build that trust?
Yep, even without the trust for some people. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I think it's like, it's that like, I don't know, as a teenager, we had this amazing school counsellor, like guidance counsellor, and my parents had a messy divorce, and so I went and saw him fairly regularly, and like I don't know, it's something about talking to someone who's outside your immediate bubble, and maybe that just eases the pressure of it. Yeah, they're not trying to they can be awkward or ask weird questions, or like I don't know, is it? And also the role of like, I don't know, maybe just like slot in that role in the school as the role of the wider community, where kids are just they don't learn everything from their parents. They learn from like aunties, uncles, friends, family, whatever, and people that they meet who they trust, who they know are qualified, or all those things in those safe spaces, and they need to be able to engage with all of these people, and their parents, but all of these people as well. Yeah, we're really lucky. There's some amazing counsellors. We've got a whole wellbeing team, and I've actually just been at a youth conference the last couple of days, and we know that teenagers, they can be at school, but if they're worried about their parents' breakup, they're not absorbing, they're not learning while they're at school. So you might feel like it's a waste, they're out of the classroom, but
that actually might be the best thing for their learning, to be able to talk to somebody about what else is going on. And it's completely up to a child what they want to share. We're not there to be nosy at all. And as a nurse, everything's completely confidential and completely separate to education. So totally separate for the teenagers. I think it's amazing service.
The talk about trauma, it's so alive nowadays, and I see it as super positive, because it means that people are studying more, we have more specialists, we have more people understanding how things might work, because we don't know it all. At the same time, I think, well, people talk so much about trauma being mainly things that happen to us when we are young, when we're children, and then I instantly think, well, so are we doing the work with the children now to try to avoid or minimize those traumas? Like, is education, in your view, do you think education is keeping up to be there and be supportive? Because we have a system that it hasn't changed for years, of like how you educate and, you know, like how school should be and what you expect the kids to give back. Do you feel like this change, is it a good moment for these things to happen, to pay more attention?
Yeah, and I think we also don't want to focus too much to make things an issue if they're not an issue either, because we know life isn't always easy, and that's actually part of life. So there's no conversation that's going to stop that reality down the track. But definitely having somewhere they can come and talk, hugely valuable.
Is that is it kind of like a toolbox kind of thing to deal with traumas? Because I guess some people have had experiences that were quite traumatizing, and some like they were not as big, but it's still. So learning some techniques, is it something that can help most people?
Yeah, but I think that if you have experienced something that is there, whether it's big trauma, little trauma, whatever, I think that you need to talk to a health professional and really have it personalised to you, because again, we're all different, and sometimes the right person asking the right questions, then a lot more can be uncovered. And also with trauma, we know that it's not actually a good thing to keep talking over the same story, that can do more harm than good.
Right. Do you have something there, Chloe? A question? Something?
I mean, I don't know. I think I agree. I went okay. I'll tell my story. This will give us all background. With the birth of my daughter Sophie. So my first was emergency Caesar, and my second, Soph, she was born at home, unplanned home birth. It all happened really went into started pushing really, really quickly, like waters broke, contractions, bang, pushing. And it took ages to get her out. But we had 2 midwives, 2 paramedics, like eventually everyone had piled in. And it was all stressful. But one of the things that prompted me so I went and got counselling actually from one of the local GPs recommended after this, and this was only like last year, so she's 5, so when she was 4, was because I went to get a pap smear and I had this like huge panic attack about it. I had so much anxiety, and pap smears are just like you would usually have no, I mean like I don't want to go do it every day, but I would not be worried about it. I'm just like, yep, cool, tick it off. I'd be like every year or whenever, and had this massive panic attack about it. And I turned up to her and I was like, oh, and she was like, right, okay, I think we need to just get you some help. And so I went and did the like funded whatever it is, 6 visits with one of the local counsellors. And it was so helpful. It was so helpful. And eventually we're like, cool, all right, I think we've digested this enough. Like we've broken it apart. We realize that there's like that you feel anxious about this because of this event, and we've now got some coping mechanisms in place to try and deal with the stress. And if this happens again, then we just have a conversation beforehand. So next time I'm due for a pap smear, I'm like right, like, okay, we'll go and have a pre-appointment with the GP and then do that, like, so that I've got a chance to like be like, okay, so this is how I'm feeling. But they were all so helpful and just kind of broke it down for me. And now I'm like, cool, great. I don't need to go back every week to talk about that same event over and over. But I've got some mechanisms in place and strategies to deal with it.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you got help. That's really awesome. And it's interesting you say that, because part of why I've really merged into the work of working with mothers is I was working in general practice here, and I was doing a lady's smear and got talking to her if she asked if she had ever had children. And 32 years after her last birth, she broke down and cried in the GP clinic with me. And she said to me that nobody had actually asked her about her birth, and that just stayed with me. It wasn't until probably 3 years afterwards that I have merged more into this area, but it really made me realise that once, and I used to feel it as a midwife, once you would say goodbye to a family, that unless you've got a GP that you see regularly, there's often never an experience where a woman has somebody they can talk to about what happened for one of the most, one of the biggest events that might happen in their life. So
life-changing.
Yeah. And also with trauma, I also experienced something traumatic when I was 18, and it wasn't until I was probably 25 that I decided or realised that I hadn't actually dealt with it. So I think anybody listening, if there is something there, that it's often, your body will tell you when it's time to deal with it, and it's up to you whether you do want to kind of seek that help. And like, amazing that you found it really helpful, the counselling. Great to hear.
And you mentioned something before to me. You said like it's something that we're doing for the next generations by looking after the mothers, because they take so much and sometimes we don't check. So that communication thing applies for everything, right?
Yeah. So I guess just going back to that connection we talked of those early years. So, but like a woman who's holding on to something traumatic, and it might get to the point where she might not feel comfortable to have sex with her husband anymore, or intimacy goes, or we know that if we are living with something that's impacting our mental health, it can flow on to every area of our life, and including our children. So it does have the power to feed onto our children, and then ultimately impact how they parent their children, because we often mirror what we've been taught.
You mentioned intimacy, and I don't have children, but I think I could imagine a situation of seeing the woman that you love quite vulnerable and not being sure of like what's the best approach to intimacy. I have friends who have children, and we talk about it, but like not that much. And I think probably women talk more than men.
Men should talk more.
We should talk more, right? So there you go. We'll start a podcast and call women to talk. Guys.
But I think the women do talk more.
Or just
wait, we'll just continue this.
You carry on. I'll sit down and just. But like, what are good ways, or like good approaches, like good tips maybe for men and for women as well? Because I like you said, sometimes the woman doesn't feel confident enough to have that intimacy again. So what are good approaches and how to deal with that situation? Because I don't know, it holds a relationship together.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Clean the house.
That is the
Would
best.
you agree, Chloe?
100%.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
You mean for the guys? Go clean the house
go
for your
clean the
woman.
house. Yeah, she can't relax if there's dishes on the bench.
Just like take something off her plate, and she will have time to get freaky with you. Like, just that is the number one tip.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Or you could take her to
That was the best
Auckland.
tip ever.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Easy. Or you were saying.
Or you could take her to Auckland for a night away or something like that.
Yeah.
Hint, hint.
Yeah.
But what about during pregnancy? Because there might be some fear there, some insecurity about like having sex. Is it okay? Is it not? Should we do it? Should we not?
Yeah, I think everybody's an individual. some women feel comfortable. Some men get really lucky actually in pregnancy, but a lot of things are going on in pregnancy, and it's not always comfortable for the lady. And as a couple, obviously, just to talk about how you're feeling and just remembering it's a season. It's not forever as well.
Yeah.
And I think just that after baby as well. And I'm definitely no expert in this field, but just communicating and just really just being patient.
Do you have moments, I don't know if like advice or understanding a situation, but like how hard it is to understand the dynamics of a couple and realize that sometimes the couple is the problem, like maybe it's just not working anymore? Because I feel like a lot of there's the classic stay together for the kids and all those old sayings. Like how good are we to pick up on sometimes it's better to...
I'm definitely no expert in this area, but I feel like there's a lot that goes on in people's minds that nobody's aware of, even their partner. So sometimes things come as a total shock to one another when there might have, to friends, it might have been obvious like years ago or whatever. So I think just, again, coming down to communication. And I think also... I do think people evolve and people change, and I know that if I married some of my previous boyfriends, we probably weren't the best match or whatever. So also I think as you go on a personal development journey and where you're at and how much people do change, and a lot of couples, they can stay together and other couples drift apart. So I think it's just about your own happiness in the end, and sometimes it doesn't always feel like that's what you're reaching for in those unsettled times, but just knowing again that there's different seasons in life. And I'm lucky. I feel like I've found my soulmate, so that's not talking about us, because I'm pretty lucky I've got a keeper there. But I think for anybody who, yourself, if you're not truly your authentic, happy self, and that's what it really comes down to, and only you can decide that.
We have two powerful women here on the show tonight, and there's another topic that usually comes to this table, which is like, the roles, what's happening nowadays, with a lot of women actually being way more successful than guys. Is this also something that can mine a relationship, or something that can affect the way that you're raising the kids? Like, I don't know if you want to talk about personal experiences, but like just the way that you see all this talk about, the role, what women have to do, what men have to do. What do you think, Chloe? You can...
I don't know my husband and I have a fairly unique relationship in that our house situation is fairly the same. So we both work from home. We both work in the same business. We have the similar flexibility in hours. So we don't have where one person's at home doing the majority of the work for the children, the other person's out earning money. I think for us, having us both on the same page has been an amazing experience for our relationship, because we both are going through the same thing at the same time. And I think, I don't know, I know I watched Dave when I had Rosie, my eldest, Dave was out working. He stayed home for 6 weeks and then went back to work. And so I did all the running around, stayed at home with, did the mum thing, and had started a business on the side, but it wasn't working hardly any hours. And then when we had Sophie, we were both self-employed by the same business. So we had to keep working. But I watched Dave go through that same struggle where, as a new mum, I went through with Rosie, where you realize all of a sudden your time is not your own. So because he used to go and be like, oh, cool, yep, great, I've got to go off to work, and I would handle everything with Rosie. Whereas when it was the both of us at home, there was no reason for one of us to leave the house and go to work and just leave the space. And he went through that same thing, and where he was just but how do I do that? I don't know. Don't know. We just have to, we're here for the children. That's all we do. And then if we can get some work done. And it was such an interesting thing watching him go through that same thing that I went through as a new mum. And I think, I don't know, I kind of think like that's been really like freeing for him and amazing. And I think, I don't know, there is a big movement within corporations now to give equal access to paid parental leave. So like big corporations be like, right, great, we're going to give you 6 months paid parental leave to the like primary caregiver, which is usually the mother. And then there is a big push now to say, well, every employee within this organisation, whether you're male or female, is entitled to the same amount of paid parental leave. And studies back up that if you have whatever parent is there and present within the first year of the life of your child, so whether you do sit like mother does 6 months and the father does the following 6 months, that caring role and that taking responsibility of being the primary caregiver for your child then translates through the entire life of your relationship. They never drop off the delegation of work within the household doesn't drop off for one or the other, whereas usually it's right, like as soon as dad goes back to work, his work level, this statistically obviously, I'm going to like generalize, but his work level drops back down to before children levels and her level goes up because she then picks up paid work and she's still doing everything around the house. She's looking after children, then has another child, you know. And so that's, I don't know, I think it's an amazing thing to have equal opportunities, and that extends to men and to women for both of us. So yes, I agree, women should be paid at the same rate for the same job, but men should also have access to the same paid leave so they can engage with their children and be there for their children. Yeah.
Create that bond.
Yeah.
So there's nothing like, I don't know, biological that would say that it makes more sense for the mother to spend more time with the child? Like if...
No, it doesn't matter. Mum, or it's the primary caregivers. Yeah.
Right. I think that's something that is used quite often as well. Oh, the mom has to be there. No, it's the person who is giving the love, the one who is raising the child. Damn. My mom lost quadruples. Is that how you say quadruples? Like four babies?
Quadruplets. Yeah.
Quadruplets.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is something that for her is always like, and I was just reflecting on what you were saying, like the lady who waited for like 32 years to talk about it, because every time that there's something on TV with twins or whatever, like she just crashes. She just cannot keep up with that. So it's so important what you're saying, like, you know, go talk, look for some support.
Yeah. And I found with my trauma, so I haven't actually ever shared it, but I guess it's time we start talking about it. So my dad, actually, he passed away when I was 18. It was actually suicide. And I felt at the time, I did a little bit of counselling, I only did the counselling because I wanted an extension at uni at the time. So it wasn't for the right reasons and I wasn't ready. And I went travelling, went to London, travelled the world, came back, and it hit me that dad wasn't there. And years had passed, but I was just in those early 20s having fun. I'd moved to Sydney and then overseas and stuff, and it was just not a big focus in my life until I kind of came home and settled again. And what actually happened was when I was around 20, I ended up developing really high blood pressure, and we've never actually been able to find why I've had high blood pressure. I've done lots of different tests. And cut a long story short, I ended up doing some work around the trauma with my dad, and following that, for a month afterwards, my blood pressure was completely normal, and the first time in 10 years it had ever been normal. Crazy. And so that really got me curious around about how our body can hold on to trauma. And so I've done a lot of work in that space. And I still do occasionally need to take, I do take blood pressure tablets still now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I continue kind of on the journey that I'm on. And obviously blood pressure's lifestyle and coffee, and I haven't cut out coffee. I just can't actually do it. But
it's not worth it.
that's just an example of just how we can ignore something, but it's still there under the surface. And there's so much more research that's going on into that as well now. So
thanks for sharing.
yeah.
Thank you. Do you feel like after the pandemic and all these 2 chaotic years that we had, like it's a good time to pay more attention and to have more professionals tapping into those areas, having these conversations?
Oh, I think we all know somebody, and it's been like that for years. And I feel really strongly for males, especially. Like my dad was a real working class man, amazing human. At times would drink too much alcohol, not a uncommon story for many males who, I'm going to generalise, but males that like fishing and might be a tradie, whatever. But really common that stuff gets bottled away, excuse the pun, but just there's not really many outlets. And I used to see it, as I said earlier, I worked in the mines for a while, and I would see men that would come and talk to me that hated their jobs, missed their families terribly, but were tied to the job for the finances or whatever, didn't want to let their wife down, when ultimately often it ended in a marriage breaking up or them not seeing their kids for extended periods. And I think that we, as a society, we need to create conversations where men can actually be real about how it is, because it's tough being on the other side and working full time when you're missing your kids. And there's, we all know the pressures of finances and everything else at the moment. But I think for a mother to have struggles or feeling like it's hard, that's accepted, but it's not so much for males. It's often that they just have to get on with it. And I think also things like going on a boys' trip and actually going to the bush and going hunting or whatever, just so powerful. And often I know I see mums that are like, oh, I need help with the kids, I don't want them to go or whatever. But just if you do have a partner that has hobbies and stuff, that it's more than them just hanging out with their mates. It's often just those conversations that can actually have a huge impact on their overall mental health. So, yeah, I'm all for, starting that conversation with men. And also for men knowing that, so a doctor's a great place to start. If you're not sure who to talk to, there's also lots of online organisations as well. And if there are any men out there listening to this, then they can contact me and I can get them in the right spot for some help as well.
Thank you. That's good. I guess it connects also to that the social issue that all the countries face, right? Like sometimes we say, we've been working a lot, and then there are this massive part of the community who actually struggles because they don't have a job, and then the addictions are different. Like we are addicted to coffee because it keeps us working, but then a lot of people are addicted to other substances because they don't have a job, and we tend to look down on people because of different addictions when we're all living in a very stressful environment, I would say. So it's nice that we share. I think there's so much power on what we're doing here now. And that's one of the missions with our show, is just like get people to share and talk, because then we relate to some issues and see if we can find some common ground there. Do you find even in Australia and places like the Coromandel, this thing with the social difference of the people, like that the problems are still similar, or they relate a little bit different, depends on what the family is going through, and then affects the child in different ways? Or for a child, like a problem is a problem?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar across the Tasman, across both countries. What do you think, Chloe?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think all communities have the same layers of society and problems. And I think when we're talking about mental health, I think you can, like, a problem can be big to you, and that doesn't make anyone else's struggle less, I think, if that makes sense. So like, just because you find something that to someone else might be a small event, find that stressful, like you hate your job, like, and you think, oh God, I should be grateful that I've got a job, or, whatever I can provide to my family, like just because that is causing you extreme stress doesn't like mean that someone else's massive thing that's just happened in their life or severe addiction, like that's also an issue. I think there's a lot of, I don't know, I think that we can have multiple things be true at the same time, and they can be true for different people for different reasons. And I think the more that we have those conversations, for mothers, I think it's a lot like really centered around like guilt and shame about being a good mother, being there for your children, putting your children and your partner first and all of that sort of stuff. But I think men have the same struggles where they just, maybe they just don't have the language or the, or the community around them or whatever to like have those conversations. And I know I'm a big believer in, just sharing a little bit of your own vulnerabilities and your own stories, because I think it can open up so many conversations and just let someone else share theirs. And I don't know.
No, thank you. That's gold. That's gold. There's so many gems there. Kate, when people approach you, so what can women expect from what you offer? And you kind of put it at the table at the start, but like just tell us a little bit more about like how you support and what kind of issues you would be more like prepared to deal with for women who are needing that moment to talk to someone and look for help.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of different areas to the business. So I do antenatal classes, so I do them locally in Whitianga every 3 months, and I also have an online pregnancy program called Made for Motherhood. So families all over New Zealand and Australia, they can access the online antenatal course. There's a whole hypnobirthing module on that, and lots of other things that you need to know for a positive birth experience. And then I also do consults either in person. I've got a little office over in Cook's Beach, or via Zoom, and women basically will sign up to work with me for either like 6 weeks or 12 weeks. We usually just start with a conversation to start with, and then we work out what we're kind of needing help with. But so things like birth trauma, that's a space that I work in, where it's a type of hypnotherapy called rewind therapy. There's also another...
Sorry to interrupt you. What is the rewind therapy?
Yeah, so basically what it does is we go back to the memory, and we basically use a technique where you can relive the memory, but we take the emotion, that's the charged emotion that's with it, we remove that. So mothers can then go back and look at their birth and feel neutral about it. So, rather than... so that's really powerful for somebody who knows that there's underlying trauma, but also often I see women who are pregnant with their second or third, and it's kind of come up now that they're pregnant again. So that's something I do. And then so a lot of my work now is more to do with, mothers or just general women's health. So you might want help with improving your health and fitness goals, might be just overall energy and vitality, and really kind of getting you from that survival mode to thriving. So kind of really vast. I usually recommend that women will have an appointment with their GP first and do a full kind of screen with them first, and then we use that as a little basis to go on from there. So really individualized.
Does the holistic word mean that you will not use you will not prescribe drugs unless the GP it's part of it? Is that?
Yeah, I won't prescribe because I'm not under this setting. I'm not a prescriber. So in other places I've used what we call a standing order. So it's there's no prescription as such, but I might suggest going back to the GP for certain things if I feel like you might need a referral, or other things like supplements and stuff like that I've done lots of research on particularly for women's health.
When you mentioned the rewind technique, I asked you to tell me a little bit more about it, because I think I saw something similar on a Netflix special called How to Change Your Mind, that they talk about psychedelics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
actually haven't watched that, but I did see.
It's a great show, and I'm pretty sure in one of them with I think was MDMA or psilocybin, and well, there's a lot of people taking it very seriously, like it should be, and they take it as a shortcut, as an easier way to go back to those memories and try to tell yourself a different story, so you see that situation in a different way. And then are you familiar with like different options instead of just the classic the pharmaceutical industry options, like that people are tapping more into nowadays?
Mushrooms? Are you talking about?
well, we know how powerful those ones are.
Yeah.
You know, like not exclusively, but like, I guess, I don't know,
Yeah.
because when I think about holistic, that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, and you mentioned, different countries deal with it differently. You know, like I'm sure if you go to South America and you talk to those tribes, they will have a list of herbs and things. They're like, chew that or eat that, or, you know, like breastfeeding is king in a lot of countries. You know, like you see, even in Brazil, like you see big kids, you know, like, and when I say big, huge, because like they're sucking while there's milk. And I've seen countries saying, no, go for the formula. And I'm like, that sounds a bit like capitalist vibe. The formula, why, if there's milk? But again, I don't want to say without knowing. So that's what I mean when, like, you know, it feels like the more we go back to the natural, it makes more sense. But I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah, I think there's definitely other ways we could do lots of medicine, basically. And I think that will always be quite restricted in terms of, which is generally a good thing, the trials and things that go on in this country. But in saying that, New Zealand is often very behind other countries, which isn't always, like, we know that there are certain cancer drugs, for example, that we absolutely need in this country right now, but they're not funded. And by the time they're funded, there'll be a new drug that we should have. But
which ones, for example, New Zealand, it's a little, you see as a little bit behind?
There's lots. There's not one in particular. I guess if I had a family member who was needing a particular drug at the moment, I would be all over it. But over my career, I've seen lots of people move back to Australia, and lucky have had that privilege that they've been able to do that, to access the healthcare that they've needed to keep them alive. And it's really sad that for other New Zealanders, it's often not they're not asking for much. It's just that we're behind the 8 ball on Pharmac approving it.
I feel like New Zealanders across the board they're not aware of how far behind they are in comparison to other countries. Like, I think that's one of the things that Dave and I talk about, like, what would make us move back to Australia, and that it would be if we needed severe healthcare and we would leave because it's not available here. And, like, especially for things like cancer, it's like, it's the stuff that is funded in Australia is not funded here. And I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of research on it, but it's just like, you know, like you just hear anecdotal stories and it's like, even things like, I'm not sure, I think when I got my pap smear, I think I paid $150 to get it done. That is fully funded in Australia. Yeah. Fully funded. Yeah. I would not, and it's such a massive barrier, and that's preventative medicine. Yeah. It's like,
and the issue here is that the funding does go to other organisations, but it's not fair for the general population. And I might have people who disagree with me saying that, but it, like you say, it's preventative. And I also believe contraception as well is something that should, and sexual health checks, that should also be available to everybody. And you did just actually make me think of, so there's a particular insulin pump if you've got type 1 diabetes. There's a advanced technology. Basically, it's a continuous infusion, so you can check your sugar levels. Our teenagers in New Zealand, they can't access this device unless it's paid for privately, whereas across the Tasman you can. And that's the difference between your child having multiple needles a day to not having any. And if that was your child, you know, it's just not fair. And that's something they're born with. It's it's their whole life. It's horrible.
I heard from my friends that like in those private health insurance things in Australia, they might even cover yoga, Pilates, you know, like some more like people would say alternative for your mental health. I've never heard of something like that in New Zealand. Is that correct? Am I going to?
Oh, I don't know. I did some research on private health insurance here recently, and I found that there was a gap. There's like a massive gap in dental. Have you found that here? Whereas like in Australia, you can get cover for your like dental procedures and things like orthodontics and things. So you could get health insurance and cover your kids knowing that you've got cover if they ever need that. And you can't get that here. Is that right?
I'm not 100% on that one.
But,
I definitely also feel that it's so expensive, the private health over here as well. Like I've always had private health in Australia, and over here I don't have it. I know I should have it, but to have the cover that I feel like I would want to have if I'm paying for private health, it's a lot of money.
It must be painful when you, especially when it comes to your children, right?
Oh yeah,
as you said, having to give that support to, and then you feel it's one more reason to be stressed about it, and might be triggering so many of those issues that we just talked about at the beginning, right? Because government is not that supportive. Did you feel when it comes to work, being in the educational system, was it good for 2 years? Did you say that you were working?
I was very, very part-time. So I did a lot of sexual health in that area and a lot of mental health. I just worked 1 day a week around children. Obviously it was a unusual time with COVID and all of that.
Did you have COVID?
Yep, I've had COVID quite a few times actually. Yep.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. It was, I was very lucky. Didn't affect me too much at all.
Good. And the school support, like, did you feel like there was support, or that was one of the reasons why you were like, nah, I'm going to do my thing. I can do different things. Was it just a nice way in the community to get to know people?
Are we allowed to talk about COVID on here?
We are allowed to talk about anything, I guess, especially if it's your experience.
So school really supportive. Cut a long story short, I have kind of navigated the mandates the last couple of years. I feel a bit nervous talking about this, but, it's, life, and we've got to, Anyway, so basically I didn't have my booster for health reasons. I didn't have my booster. And basically that meant with nothing to do with the school, but to do with the health system having ongoing mandates. It meant that I kept losing my job quite regularly, which isn't ideal. Basically I decided in the end, after 8 months of the mandates, I decided that it was probably time that I let go of that stress. When I felt when they were continuing on, it actually wasn't serving the purpose. So my exemption was for 90 days, but I got COVID after 60 days. And anyway, long story short, I didn't feel that the mandate that was in place was actually doing what it was supposed to be doing or making any difference. And I don't feel I put anyone at risk. And I also felt a bit gutted that I was unwell, and I knew for me that the booster, in my situation, the booster wasn't the best health thing for me, and just felt a bit disappointed that we don't have that autonomy for our body, and particularly that's a huge part of when people come and see me. That's just so important, and it's a human right. So I felt a bit emotionally drained, I guess, just the last 12 months. And I'm a ICU trained nurse. I could work anywhere if they needed somebody to help with a ventilator, if it kind of got to that. And I just felt a bit disappointed by the Ministry of Health, how they handled the ongoing mandates, which many people were unaware of, particularly, I guess, feeling strongly that we're super short of midwives, nurses. It's
Kate, why do you think it's such a big thing that we lack these professionals? Like, small country, like people who are keen to go and study and become like good professionals. Do you have a take on why we have this lack of professionals?
I think we've got some amazing professionals in our country. We really do. I think that.
I mean, like numbers, not quality. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but I think working conditions for many people, like there isn't. I'm sorry, but there's no way I would work at Waikato. Like you can't even get a car park to start with before you've even started your shift. I was originally, when I first moved here, I was planning on working in midwifery, and I did the interview, and I just said, like, I'm travelling from the Coromandel. Could I have consecutive days? I don't want to be driving 5-hour round trip a couple of times a week, I just want to do it once. And they couldn't accommodate that. And it's like back when I graduated 15 years ago, we could do a 6-week roster in other countries. So just, I think some things, it's time to kind of step up. And I think being more flexible around mothers, like, to be honest, the school job is actually the only nursing job I can do around my family. Hence partly why I've gone out on my own. I think all organisations, there's a lot of amazing staff out there, but if it's not possible, particularly rural areas, like if we can't work around our kids, it's actually not possible.
It's like a lot of jobs. Hey, you can love the job, but it's the stuff around it, that like burns you out. It's the commuting into work. It's the bureaucracy or the paperwork. It's the, it's all of that crap around the outside. It's like, no, I actually love going to work and doing my day-to-day job. But if you can't make this work with my life, then I have a life too. I'm not obliged to come and work this job.
And like here, my hubby, he works away during the week, so there's actually no option. Like I can only work set hours around kindy.
Thanks for sharing. That's great. It's very empowering to hear stories and again understand where people are coming from. We have this thing of like, when you need a doctor, when you need a nurse, like we want the best service ever, but then sometimes we forget to appreciate, to fight for the rights for those people. So like what you're sharing with us, it's powerful. Thank you. And the show is here to support. So give us some more information about how to get in touch and do some work with Kate.
Yeah, I'm still going to work on my sales pitch.
Your Instagram page is pretty cool, by the way.
Thank you. Yep. So Instagram is at Kate Seddon with 1D. Otherwise on Facebook, you can also get onto my website that way as well. So you can either book a discovery call, send me a DM, or talk to a friend of a friend. I'm sure somebody around here might know me. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, Chloe.
You're so welcome.
That was
it's been
cool.
fun.
Did
we
you
can talk
enjoy
all
it?
night. Yeah.
I know, right?
There's so much stuff we haven't talked about, and we're just going to keep on chatting.
We'll bring Kate back for sure.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some information about Blueberry Cove? Because it's a good time to buy some presents for the end of the year. So can you just remind us of where to find the books? Yeah.
So you can check out blueberryco.com.au. Actually, we've just done blueberryco.co.nz. There you go.
Yay.
Local.
Yeah.
Just did that this week. If you're after keepsake books, planners, get creative and come and join our tribe.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thanks, Blue Ginger. We're going to have some kai now. Appreciate it. Guys, thanks for watching us. We're back on Friday, 7 p.m., 3 times per week, as you know, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Peace.